The rain fell in soft, uneven beats, drumming against the cracked pavement and pooling in shallow puddles that reflected the dim glow of the streetlights. Kenji stood on the edge of the deserted park, shoulders hunched, hoodie soaked through, staring at the old basketball court where the paint had long since faded. The echoes of bouncing balls, laughter, and victory chants that once filled this place were gone, replaced by a silence so heavy it pressed against his chest that he could feel it. The weight of every choice he had avoided, every dream he had buried. He had always been careful. Too careful. The type of caution that keeps you safe, but also keeps you small. Safe, yes, but hollow. Maybe I should just give up, he whispered to no one, his voice swallowed by the rain. His fingers curled around the straps of his backpack, knuckles white. He had wanted to be a writer. A storyteller. But somewhere along the way, the fear had crept in, the fear of failing, of being rejected, of trying and ending up empty-handed. His phone buzzed in his pocket, jolting him. A message from his younger sister, Seikou. Don't forget about dinner tonight. Mom's asking about your new project. Kenji looked down at the glowing screen and felt a twist of guilt. He hadn't told her, or anyone, what he had been working on. The manuscript he had spent months pouring his soul into sat untouched on his desk, a fragile stack of papers trembling under the weight of his doubts. He wanted to show it, to share it, but what if it wasn't good enough? What if all the rejection letters, all the polite declines, all the quiet dismissals came crashing back at him? He remembered the words his high school teacher had once said. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the stepping stone. Don't fear failing, Kenji. Fear not trying. At the time, he had nodded politely, smiling through the nerves, but the message had barely stuck. Now, years later, it came back, whispering in the edges of his mind as if taunting him. A sharp gust of wind swept across the park, making the trees shiver. Kenji's hoodie clung to him, and he wrapped his arms around himself. Memories of another time washed over him, the time he had played basketball here as a teenager, chasing after a ball, fearless and wild, even when he missed shot after shot. Every failure then had felt like a lesson, a spark that pushed him harder, made him laugh louder, made him believe in himself. But life, as it often does, had a way of smothering that spark. The bills piled up, responsibilities chained him, and slowly, the daring boy who chased impossible dreams became a cautious man who chased safe paths. Every day was a loop of small compromises and quiet apologies. To himself, to the world. He crouched down, letting the rain soak his hair, and picked up a pebble, tossing it absent-mindedly across the puddles. Each splash felt like a heartbeat, each ripple a question. Why do you stop before you even try? Kenji's gaze drifted upward. Across the street, the lights of a tiny bookstore flickered, warm and inviting. It was the kind of place he used to imagine owning, a place filled with books that whispered secrets, and stories waiting to be discovered. And yet he had never dared to take the first step toward making that dream real. His chest tightened. The fear wasn't just about failing, it was about revealing himself. About showing the world that he wanted something bigger than survival, bigger than comfort. And the truth was, he was terrified of what people might think. What if they laughed? What if they didn't care? What if, after all this time, he discovered he wasn't good enough? A memory hit him like a punch. A summer evening, his father sitting quietly in the living room, staring at a photograph of a young Kenji holding a trophy. Don't let fear decide your life, son, his father had said, voice low and serious. You'll regret the things you never dared to do far more than the things you fail at. Kenji's throat tightened, and for a moment, he felt tears prick his eyes. He wanted to believe those words. He wanted to feel that fire again. But the years of hesitation, the accumulation of what-ifs, made him doubt everything. A soft honk of a passing car echoed down the empty street. Kenji glanced toward the horizon, where the city lights blurred through the rain, like distant stars just out of reach. He realized he had been standing there for hours, frozen between what he wanted and what he feared. Then, something shifted. A memory from childhood, a tiny paper airplane soaring across a classroom, clumsy but determined, flashed in his mind. It had flown farther than anyone expected. And he had felt proud, not because it was perfect, but because he had tried. The thought stirred something deep in him, a small, flickering flame. Could he still try? Could he still dare to fail? The rain slowed, almost hesitant, as if the world itself was waiting for his answer. Kenji's hand shook as he pulled out the manuscript from his backpack, the pages damp but intact. His fingers traced the words, each letter a whisper of hope, a fragment of courage he had almost forgotten. And in that moment, a sudden, sharp resolve pierced through the fog of fear. He couldn't go on like this, paralyzed, hiding, waiting for permission from the world or from himself. He had to try. Not tomorrow, not when it felt right. But now. But before he could take the first step, a shrill ringing cut through the quiet. His phone. Another message. This time, from his best friend, Haruto. Kenji, are you really going to let this go? You have something worth sharing. Don't waste it. Kenji froze. His heart raced, palms slick with rain. The words hit him harder than the storm ever could. Every excuse, every fear, every moment he had wasted suddenly felt like chains snapping. He wanted to run, to retreat, to hide. But he also wanted to step forward, to finally prove, to himself, that he could. He glanced once more at the bookstore, its warm glow like a beacon. The street stretched ahead, dark and uncertain, but for the first time in years, it didn't scare him. It invited him. It dared him. Kenji inhaled sharply, letting the rain wash over his face, and whispered to himself. No more hiding. I have to try. Even if I fail, I have to try. And just as he took a tentative step forward, a loud crash echoed behind him, the sound of a car skidding on the wet pavement, tires squealing, heading straight toward the edge of the park where he had been standing. Time slowed. Heart hammering, Kenji froze. His mind screamed, the world blurred, and the rain seemed to hold its breath. The screech of tires faded into a silence heavier than the rain itself. Kenji's heart pounded as the adrenaline surged through his veins, leaving him trembling. The car had stopped just inches from the puddle he had been standing in. The driver leapt out, shouting something in a panicked, hurried voice. Kenji barely registered the words. All he could feel was the sudden sharpness of life pressing against him, reminding him that the world didn't wait for hesitation. He stumbled backward, still clutching his manuscript, soaked and trembling, and for the first time, he truly understood the fragility of time. The moment he had been waiting for, this chance to start over, to take the leap, was already being measured against the heartbeat of reality. Back in his apartment, dripping wet and shivering, Kenji sat at his desk. The manuscript lay in front of him like a fragile promise, a mirror of his own fear and ambition. He ran his fingers over the damp pages, thinking of the countless nights he had stayed up, scribbling in coffee-stained notebooks, convinced the words would never matter. But now, after the near accident, every word felt urgent. Every sentence seemed to whisper, "Try. Now. Don't wait any longer." The next morning, Kenji went to the cafe he used to visit when he wanted to feel the pulse of the city, the hum of strangers' lives reminding him that he was part of something bigger. He had promised himself he would submit his manuscript today. And yet, as he sat there, pen in hand and email drafted to the publisher, the familiar paralysis settled over him. What if they laughed? What if they rejected him, like every fear that had haunted him for years? The thought made his stomach knot, sweat forming on his brow despite the chill of the early morning. Across the cafe, a child's laughter pierced the air, light and unrestrained. Kenji watched as the little girl spilled her hot chocolate and didn't cry. She simply giggled, picked it up, and tried again. And in that innocent persistence, Kenji saw a reflection of himself before the world had convinced him to fear failure. He exhaled, long and slow, and pressed send. Immediately, panic rose like a tide. Doubts clawed at him. What have you done? What if this proves you're not enough? His hands shook, and he gripped the edge of the table as if holding on to life itself. Hours passed. Every ping of the cafe door made his heart leap, imagining the publisher's response, good or bad, and each time it was only the delivery of more coffee or another stranger passing by. Days stretched into weeks. Rejection emails came, polite but firm. Not the right fit at this time. We encourage you to keep writing. Thank you for your submission. Each one landed like a small stone in his chest, dull but heavy, threatening to extinguish the spark he had just reignited. And yet, something remarkable began to happen. With each rejection, Kenji realized he wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated. He was still standing. Still writing. Still trying. Late one night, he wandered back to the old basketball court, drenched in moonlight, the air crisp and sharp. He dribbled an imaginary ball, felt the echo of his childhood reverberate through his chest. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the fear of failure, and to face it. You're still afraid, he muttered to himself, voice rough, echoing against the empty park. But at least you're trying. Then came the invitation, a local literary contest. A small, almost insignificant announcement in a newspaper, yet it carried the weight of opportunity. Kenji hesitated, staring at the page for what felt like hours. The contest demanded submission of a story in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Enough to write, edit, polish, and potentially fail again. But the hesitation felt different now. Fear was there, yes, but it was no longer a wall keeping him out. It was a signpost, pointing him toward growth. Kenji dove in. Every day became a battle with himself, the temptation to give up, the longing to escape the pressure of expectation. Nights were long and silent, punctuated by the scratching of his pen and the occasional groan of frustration. Friends called, inviting him out, but he refused. The world could wait. This was his moment, and yet deep inside, doubt clawed relentlessly. What if all this effort ended in nothing? What if he exposed himself to ridicule, embarrassment, or heartbreak? He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of every failure he had avoided, every dream he had abandoned. One night, his phone buzzed with a text from Seikou. You're doing this for you, right? Her words hit him harder than any criticism or self-doubt. It wasn't about approval. It wasn't about anyone else. It was about finally daring to try, about giving himself permission to reach for something beyond survival. The days passed, and Kenji poured himself into the story. He wove every ounce of fear, every glimmer of hope, into the pages. Characters stumbled, failed, rose again, mirroring his own struggle. He realized, painfully, that the story was as much about him as it was about them. Writing it wasn't just a task, it was a confrontation with his own courage. The night before submission, Kenji sat by the window, rain pattering lightly, and read through the manuscript one last time. Each word shimmered with vulnerability. Each sentence trembled with courage. And in that trembling, he found his own heartbeat steadying, strong and unwavering. He hit submit. For a long moment, nothing happened. The world seemed to hold its breath. Kenji slumped in his chair, a mixture of relief and terror washing over him. This was it. The culmination of months of struggle, fear, and determination. And now, all he could do was wait. That evening, as he walked through the city streets, neon lights reflecting in puddles, Kenji felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Fear had not disappeared. It had simply become a companion rather than a chain. He could feel it behind him, nudging him forward, reminding him that trying was the only true victory. Then came the call, a simple, unfamiliar number flashing on his phone. His stomach nodded as he answered. Kenji-san? A warm, professional voice said. This is Miyu from Sakura Publishing. We received your submission, and we'd like to offer you a contract. Time stopped. The world blurred. Kenji's hands shook, his mouth dry. He could barely form the words. What? You've written something remarkable. The voice continued. We'd love to help you share it with the world. Kenji stepped outside into the rain, letting it soak through him. He laughed, a sound torn from deep inside, raw and unguarded. The fear, the struggle, the doubt, all of it had led him here. And in that laughter, in the tremble of joy running down his spine, he understood the truth. Failure was never the enemy. Not trying, hiding, running from fear, that was the real danger. Every risk, every stumble, every rejection had been a step toward this moment, The streets stretched before him, alive with possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, Kenji didn't feel small. He felt limitless. Kenji woke to the soft, golden light of dawn spilling through his apartment window. The city outside was slowly stirring, cars humming, people walking, a rhythm he had long ignored in his own life. But today felt different. There was a quiet electricity in the air, as if the world had subtly shifted just for him. He reached for his phone, the contract email still glowing in his inbox. Reading it again, he let the words sink in. "We'd like to help you share it with the world." A simple sentence, but it carried the weight of every sleepless night, every trembling hand, every tear shed in silence. He smiled, a soft, vulnerable smile that he hadn't allowed himself in years. The journey hadn't been easy. The fear hadn't disappeared. But he had discovered something far greater. That fear was a companion, a compass pointing toward growth, not a cage locking him in place. Each rejection, each doubt-filled night, had been a step along a path that he had almost refused to walk. Kenji's first day with the publisher was a blur of meetings, edits, and discussions. Miyu, the editor, had a way of seeing beyond the words, noticing the spaces between sentences, the heartbeat beneath the ink. "Your story isn't just a narrative," she said softly. "It's courage wrapped in paper. People will feel you in every word." Hearing that, Kenji felt a strange, almost sacred validation, not because someone praised him, but because he finally allowed himself to exist fully in his own life, without apology or hesitation. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of creation and self-discovery. Kenji found himself standing in front of mirrors, asking questions he had avoided for years. Why did I hold back? What am I really afraid of? And slowly, he began to answer. He realized that failure had never been the enemy. What had threatened him was invisibility, living a life so careful, so small, that he might vanish without leaving a trace. One evening, as the city lights shimmered on rain-soaked streets, Kenji visited the old basketball court one last time. He dribbled a ball, letting it bounce in a rhythmic pulse against the cracked concrete. The echoes carried memories, childhood laughter, teenage triumphs, adult hesitation, and each bounce felt like a heartbeat syncing him with the past, present, and the possibility of the future. Aiko had accompanied him, carrying an umbrella, smiling warmly. "You look alive," she said simply. And he realized she was right. The spark he had thought lost forever wasn't just back, it had grown. That night, after returning home, Kenji opened his manuscript one final time before publication. He read each page slowly, savoring the imperfections, the raw honesty, the fear that had been woven into every sentence. It was beautiful, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Because he had dared to try. Months later, the book launched. At a small literary event, he stood before a crowd, hands shaking, heart pounding. When he began to read, his voice was soft at first, tentative, then stronger with each word. Faces in the audience shifted, captivated. Some nodded, some smiled, some had tears glistening. And Kenji understood in that moment something profound: connection, impact, meaning. The world had responded, not to perfection, but to courage. After the reading, a young woman approached him. She was barely 20, nervous, clutching a notebook. I wanted to tell you," she said, voice quivering, "that your story gave me courage. I've been afraid to start my own project, but now I think I can." Kenji smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't just about him. It was about every person who had felt frozen by fear. Every person who had chosen comfort over possibility. Every person standing on the edge, wondering if they could leap. Later, alone, Kenji returned to the manuscript. He reflected on the journey, on near accidents, sleepless nights, rejections, doubts, and small victories. And he realized the truth that had been whispering all along: fear of failure is natural, but it is the fear of not trying that steals life from us. To try is to live. To attempt is to honor the soul we were given. He thought of the little girl in the cafe, laughing through spilled hot chocolate, the paper airplane soaring in his childhood classroom, the almost car in the rain. all moments connected by a single thread: action, courage, the choice to move forward despite uncertainty. Kenji closed his eyes, letting a tear fall freely. A tear for every moment he had been afraid. A tear for every chance he had almost missed. And a tear for every possibility now waiting to unfold. When he opened his eyes, he felt lighter, freer. The world hadn't changed, but he had. And that made all the difference. He whispered to the quiet room, almost as a promise to himself. I will fail. I will stumble. I will fall. But I will always, always try. And in that promise, there was life. There was hope. There was the courage to begin again, endlessly, beautifully, humanly. The story ended, but the journey, the true journey, had just begun. Life lesson: success isn't the absence of failure. It's the courage to take the first step, the strength to try, and the resilience to rise again and again. Shippai wa Seikou no Moto. Failure is the foundation of success.